All right. Hey there, everybody. Welcome into the Auburn Postgame Show brought to you by Medical Properties Trust. I'm Simone Eli alongside Matt Scalisi. Auburn Postgame Show right here after the Alabama State game, although we have Auburn versus Auburn there on the Super. Auburn actually played Alabama State. So 62-0, the final score.
That's 2 weeks in a row for me, Simone.
He's just trying to mess with Tiger fans just to give y'all something to talk about in the comments. But Auburn beats Alabama State 62-0.
We got it now. We're moving too fast for me.
We're set. We're all set. That's the final. And it looks nice, on paper. And you go look at the stats. They look nice on paper. But at the end of the day, definitely a different story from week to week when it comes to performance-wise, especially in the first half. Matt, we'll start there.
I think that we talked about this morning on the pregame show, wanting to play a clean game today. And I think the second half looked great. And I'm not sure I would say that it necessarily was clean, but it was very explosive. Auburn was completely dominant in the second half of this game. The talent gap was obvious. Mm-hmm. It wasn't obvious in the first half. And I think that's an issue that Bryan Harsin is probably going to spend all week talking to his team about. Yeah. I will say this, the defense was pretty consistent the entire game. We did see some of that explosiveness, that ability to change the game and actually score from defense and special teams from Auburn today. The offense for the first half of this game, I think we saw them get out of rhythm a little bit. And I don't think you can even blame it on one group. I don't think that this was all about the offensive line not having a good day, because you can look at basically every unit on the offense, and they were all making a lot of sloppy mistakes in the first half. Yep. The running backs, who we know are talented, we know there's no issue there, just were missing opportunities, missing openings. They got them in the second half. Bo Nix, a very average first half, missing some open receivers, not making some great decisions the way that he did week one. Yeah, but they were all there the second half, and I think the communication, you really saw the difference in the energy level, in the sort of the quality of play, the execution. It all really skyrocketed after halftime, and I think that's a good sign if you're an Auburn fan, because you want to know that this staff can make good adjustments when their team's not playing great in the first half.
Yeah, and not only make good adjustments, but have the team respond. You can say all the things you want to say at halftime, but for them to respond the way that they did, 35 points there in the third quarter. But I think Scott, once again, our guy here, brings up a great point. And we talked
early morning curse.
Early morning curse, 11 o'clock kickoffs, and you kind of see that come into play, especially offensively. It's very cerebral positions. The timing with situations. Bo Nix, a turnover, sloppy on third down, 6 penalties in the first half. A lot of drops as well, but holding issues up front. That's one thing that Bryan Harsin had discussed going in this offseason, going into the season, is trying to figure out. Brent's comment right here is fantastic, by the way.
It's too early in the season for that, man. We gotta hold off on the anxiety attack.
SEC play yet, but I love it. But the offensive line situation, Harsin did make that a point of emphasis, a point of concern, really. He straight up said that he was concerned, trying to figure out rotations, what 5 guys he wanted out there. And part of me feels like that's still in the works a little bit, and it will be an ongoing thing. A lot of this for me was that early morning, and part of it is your opponent. Okay. I mean, let's not pretend like that's not in the back of their minds, like in the back of these guys' minds. And they kick it into gear in the second half, and they're like, oh crap, it's only a, 3-possession game, and we should be up by a lot more. It's been sloppy. It's been ugly. Harsin lights a fire, and things get turned around.
Yeah, and Jarquez Hunter actually said after the game that basically Bryan Harsin sort of demanded that they play with more energy in the second half. That's what he had chalked it up to in the first half. He just basically said, you guys are not bringing it from an energy standpoint, and they went out there, and obviously Jarquez Hunter himself had a phenomenal second half, and he ended up with 147 yards in this game. On 8 carries, which is pretty efficient. I believe now is the record holder for the longest rushing touchdown in Auburn football history, with a 94-yard run in the second half. So, yes, Auburn is in, I think, skill position wise, Auburn should be feeling really good right now. The issue is, how is this offensive line going to hold up against better competition? I think they've done okay for at least parts of both of these games so far.
Mm-hmm.
But how are they going to look against Penn State? How are they going to look against, later on in the season, how are they going to look against Georgia and Alabama?
Mm-hmm.
And it's really impossible to know at this point. We have not seen them tested. The thing that should give you confidence, I think, regardless, is the fact that Auburn has some guys who can make things happen even in less than ideal circumstances. Tank and Jarquez Hunter are clearly guys who can do amazing things in one-on-one situations. We saw Demetrius Robertson really finally break out today and have a fantastic game and look like the number one receiver for Auburn. So there are some good answers out there. The issue is how well can this offensive line play, and what kind of a difference is it going to make for Bo Nix and for the rest of those offensive skill guys? Yeah,
and we'll know pretty quick. Once Auburn gets into the thick of their schedule, it doesn't take long. Next week, Penn State on the road, a very tough, difficult place to play. And it won't take long for Auburn to really, truly be tested and to understand kind of that measuring stick, how far they have to go, what's important. But a good, great comments that we're getting here. Guys can't just show up, and a lot of that is part of that, who you're playing mentality. And I don't want to bring this up a lot, on this post-game show, but it's one thing that Nick Saban often harps on. It's a lot of, I'm just saying, a lot of coaches harp on. I know, it's like cursing, I'm not allowed to do that. But you hear it from coaches, all throughout college football is, don't just show up and expect to make plays, to get it done. And I think that Harsin is proving he has the respect of his players. For them to come out and to respond in that way is a huge, huge positive for what that can do for this program down the road.
I totally agree. I think that's probably the most promising thing we've seen out of these two games, because, again, really tough to judge anything from stats and from the score. What you wanted to see is, what is this team's chemistry like together, and what is their chemistry with their new coach? And I think there are signs from both of these first two games that this team seems to like playing for Brian Harsin, for their entire new coaching staff. Really, I think there seems to be some good chemistry going there. I think you're also now starting to see some individual players emerge as leaders on the team, which is a thing that needed to happen. Mm-hmm. I think, but look, obviously Bo Nix is a guy that's going to be looked at, but you can't just have a quarterback as the sole leadership figure on your team. You've got to have a group of guys that are looked to. And we're now seeing guys. I think Tank certainly is that, but it's great to have a freshman star on that offense too, in Hunter, who's now really starting to establish himself as a big part of the offense. And Robertson's a new guy on the team too, and looks again like he's already becoming somebody who has a really good rapport with Bo Nix.
James Barnett just put up a comment on Facebook. It's a great point. I was impressed with the second half adjustments. When's the last time we saw that? So much truth in this comment. There have been situations on the Plains, whether it's SEC, non-conference, you name it, in the past. Again, no disrespect to the Gus Malzahn era, but there were times where dudes just didn't respond. They came out flat, and they were flat the entire game. So again, not trying to beat a dead horse here, but that a huge bright point for Auburn moving forward. Another bright point is the defense. Matt, you talked about it off the top, forcing a couple turnovers. At the end of the day, a goose egg is a goose egg. You get your 0 bars, whatever it is. Like guys, players, coaches get pumped up about that. No points put on the board by the Hornets at all on the Plains. Yeah, absolutely. And better than that, you can't measure the defense just from a shutout. They put points on the board today. And, I think at a time when Auburn's offense was struggling in the first half and really only scored a touchdown in the first half, that could have given Alabama State I'm not saying they could have won the game, but they would have come out in the second half likely with a different attitude, with a different approach and energy if they are down 7-0 instead of 20-0. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the kind of momentum shift that a defense capable of scoring can bring to a team that I think we really have seen it at Auburn in recent years. That's not really anything new for this Auburn defense. Mm-hmm. Kevin Steele recruited well. Yeah. That group, I think, had established a really successful culture already. And it looks like Derek Mason has
sort of continued that on as he's become the leader of this defense. But man, does it make a huge difference to know that you've got a defense and special teams group that can put 2 to 3 touchdowns on the board in a game when they need to, and really support the offense.
And that's how you win games in the SEC. Not only putting points on the board offensively, but all 3 phases, putting the work in. At the end of the day, Brian Sewell, good point. A lot of work, but a win is a win. That's the biggest thing for Auburn moving forward. A final tune-up before some real play. Penn State on the road. I think that Brian Harsin has seen what he needs to see and knows what he wants to know at this point in the first 2 games. He said in the press conference this week that he wants to see role player guys step up and contribute in the ways that they can if they're not going to be starters. And more, that's going to be huge. Depth in the SEC, depth when you're playing a Power 5 team is just so invaluable.
Yeah, and an interesting point here from Amber too, who says if you continue to see that level of special teams and defensive play, it really could actually impact kind of the overall view of Auburn. Could even affect them in the rankings. I definitely think they're going to need it for the tougher part of their schedule, and I think that starts next week. I think we've seen now that Penn State is a team that looks like they are talent-wise able to challenge Auburn in a different way. And this is in many ways going to be the beginning of the season for Auburn coming up this week. I don't think that either of these 2 teams are necessarily without their flaws, obviously, but I think that when you look at how college football is playing out, right? And I know we tend to kind of get focused on just the game we're watching or even just the conference that we pay most attention to, but it all does matter. And especially when you're playing out of conference, the context of it all matters. What Penn State fans are seeing right now is Ohio State just lost, and they didn't really look very good either. Yep. So you have to understand the mentality, I think, of your opponent going into this game, that right now Penn State might be seeing an opportunity for themselves.
Huge
program.
That's what I was thinking, opportunity.
They have wanted to be relevant again for a very long time, and they've been waiting for their shot. And maybe this is the year. Maybe Ohio State is finally down this year, and somebody else can step up in the Big Ten and maybe even make a playoff run. Penn State knows if they can get a win over Auburn, they are on everybody's tongues in college football immediately. So Auburn fans want this, and they want to be back in the spotlight. But Penn State fans, there's plenty of motivation for them going into this game, and it's at home, and they're all just as ready to rock out their home stadium as Auburn fans have been the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, and as much as this is an opportunity for Penn State, it's an opportunity for Auburn. It's not like one has really more to lose. Both teams have so much to gain from a win here.
I agree. Yeah,
I think you can't even stress that enough.
I think that this is a game kind of not even really like a Georgia Clemson game where everybody already respects both of the teams and they're sort of going to be considered elite no matter what happens. This is like 2 hungry dogs fighting over a steak, right? That's what this, and only one of them gets it.
Analogy.
So to me, this is kind of the highest stakes that it gets in some ways in college football. So I'm really looking forward to this game. I think we're going to learn a lot about Auburn from how they approach this game and how they react to it afterwards, win or lose.
Yes. Totally agree. So it'll be a top 25 matchup. Auburn technically 25th right now. Penn State.
I think Auburn will move up too. I think they will be higher tomorrow.
I agree. Penn State ranked as well right now. So great opportunity for both teams. But at the end of the day, 2 solid efforts. Overall, I think we can give a solid effort in spots, incredible bright spots for Brian Harsin in his debut. 2 games at home. You win it by 120 something to 10. I mean, I can't really do math. It's a lot. You win it by a lot. That matters. To see guys respond the way that they did matters. To have the ground game matters. Defensive effort matters. So just a very high ceiling. I like that. I like that from Scott right there. Auburn's ceiling is higher, and I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, we'll see. The ceiling is also impacted by the schedule. So we will continue to learn more about just how tough Auburn's schedule is as this season goes on.
Yeah.
I don't think Auburn was the only team to not play 4 perfect quarters today. You look around the SEC, a lot of sloppiness out there. Alabama got off to a sloppy start even in their game that's happening right now. So there's opportunities. We don't know how this season's going to go for Auburn yet. And anybody who tells you they do has not watched college football long enough. So we'll see. We'll continue to watch this team and see just how high that ceiling is.
Yep, no crystal balls put out here after week against FCS opponents.
I've been made to look like a fool too many times to make predictions.
Smart man. All right, guys. Auburn post-game show brought to you by Medical Properties Trust. Auburn beats Alabama State at home 62-0. The Tigers will certainly be challenged when they take a trip to Happy Valley next week. But a good game day overall. Y'all enjoy the rest of your Saturday.
Medical Properties Trust.